Hey everybody, hope you're well. Welcome to a late night edition of Theme Thursday. I am in Dallas tonight. Hopped to Dallas this morning, did some work with United Way of Metro Dallas, heading back tomorrow, and suddenly realized I had not put out Theme Thursday. Yesterday during 3 Minute Coach, are you ready to do the absurd? I mentioned I was going to do ideation today, and that's when I realized last week we had a little upload failure in Costa Rica, so we never got to upload Analytical. So for my buddy Henry in Monterrey, Mexico, this is Analytical on Theme Thursday just for you. Analytical this week. We're talking about analytical. People with the StrengthsFinder theme of analytical. Analytical is a thinking theme that is focused in on being critical about the sources of data. Analytical, all the thinking themes have different elements. I talk about learner being thinking for application. Ideation being thinking for innovation. Analytical is thinking about where did the information come from. Analytical asks critical thinking questions. They ask questions that almost seem cutting in some ways. They're very focused on the data. And so, in fact, a lot of times analytical will ask us questions and it almost comes across like they think we're stupid. And so people can at times react negatively to analytical. But analytical's gift is they can cut through the noise and say, okay, what's the real data? We can run away with anecdotes and stories. Analytical says, okay, wait, what's really true? What actually is in our best interest? Now, at times, I've called analytical the no fun patrol. Because analytical, well, I've seen people do it. They're scared of analytical, so they don't engage them very early. They come up with a big idea, and they think if they can sell the idea enough, the analytical will just get on board. Well, one of the challenges is that analytical, by its very nature, to make sure things are sound, they poke holes in your ideas. And so I often say analytical, you should engage them earlier in the process. Ask analytical about your ideas up front, not at the back end. If you create an idea, they'll then poke holes in it. But if instead I say, hey, my analytical friend, I've got an idea, I'm about to start planning, where do you think I should start? What do you think I should consider? They will help you create a better plan and are therefore less likely to tear it apart, and we're less likely to have this emotional response. If you have analytical, remember, you have a real gift, but it's a sharp gift. Like any good knife, it can cut the steak really well, but it must be handled with care. So be cautious, be intentional about how you do that. If you know someone with analytical, don't jump to the conclusions. They're making comments about you. Focus in on, is there any truth to the question? Ask them earlier. Ask them specifically. Be ready to give details and give background information. If you want to convince analytical, make sure your data is sound. You can't just share stories and narrative. As a person with communication, when I teach StrengthsFinder themes, I see analytical in my audience. When I see my strengths list of the participants, I will often remember, make sure to cite the data sources. Make sure to provide the StrengthsFinder validation report, things like that. Analytical is an exceptional theme to help create great ideas, and the more analytical realizes that you are sound, that you have good information from good and trusted sources, they're less likely to question you. Analytical, work hard to ask your questions intentionally and with care, realizing that it's not just information. Many people will feel emotionally attached to having the answer or not, and so we can take it the wrong way. So when it comes to communication, again, communication, decision-making, self-management, people with analytical, they ask questions, they ask why, they're listening for data, they're listening for sources, they're listening for where information came from. So they express inquisitively and directly, and they're also listening for your background, where they don't really trust you. Same thing goes with the decision making. They prioritize solutions that are the most soundly resourced and researched from the right sources. When it comes to self-care, analytical, you might like doing critical thinking. You might like studying up on historic events and kind of hearing about the process of how things happen. Not just the overarching story, but almost doing your own research. Things that you can pour into and bring your kind of discerning mind to, you think you might find life-giving. And so you might take a course, you might start studying historic events like the sinking of the Lusitania or something in an Eric Larson book. Things that are about non-fiction events but have critical core elements that kind of put the process together that you can almost kind of try to play sleuth for just a little bit. So that is the StrengthsFinder theme of analytical. Hope you've enjoyed that. If you know somebody who has analytical, please tag them here. If you have analytical, tag yourself. Share this with a friend. Next week, I think we are going to talk about, let's do ideation next week. We're kind of sticking thinking themes. So ideation for next week. Tune in then. Until then, have a great weekend. Lead courageously.